Has she been able then to describe then the events of what happened after that stop?
She, when she met with our investigators, she's been very cooperative and been very helpful in the investigation.
Has she said why she didn't report this earlier or come forward earlier?
There's actually, I think there was a concern on her part whether the complaint might be taken seriously or not. I will say this, through some uniqueness about this situation, she encountered us, and then we had to go back and try to search and seek out her again for follow-up. And when we did that, I think she realized that the police department was serious in taking this matter to seriousness, and I think we built a little bit of trust with her.
And you're continuing to investigate, are other charges possible, such as rape or kidnapping?
At this point, it's too early to say.
But those are possible?
I can't say at this point.
Chief, can you define what violation of public office means?
Well, I'm going to give a very generic, it won't be the official code, but pretty much when you, as citizens, hire us to do a job, you expect us to be beyond reproach. You expect us to act in a way that is professional, that is courteous, that does not violate the law. And I think in this case, there had been a failure, at least by this individual. And that, excuse me a second, this gentleman's, he's going to wear his arm out because he keeps trying to get my attention. Yes, sir.
I just want to know, have there been any previous disciplinary actions against this particular officer?
This officer, upon my understanding, does not have any disciplinary actions in his history.
Do you have any reason to believe that there are other victims? I mean, how long was this guy on the force?
This individual has worked for the Cobb County Police Department for approximately 4 years. At this point, the investigation is continuing, and it's too early to say if there'll be other people that would or would not be considered a victim.
Was
Chief,
this, I'm sorry.
What sort of policies and procedures are in place that would prevent this kind of thing, such as the required use of body cam video and things like that, that maybe he was able to get around to hide what he's accused of doing?
The Cobb County Police Department's policy when it comes to the use of videos, as you referred to, is that anytime our officers have an encounter with a citizen, that they use that in-car camera, and if they're issued a body camera, that they use that body camera. That is for multiple reasons. One, for collection of evidence in a criminal case. It can also clear an officer if there's an accusation that is not true. In this particular case, I don't believe they were used.
And do you know if he was issued a body cam, if he would have had one and that was off?
It is my understanding that he was issued one, and I don't believe it was used.
Hey, Chief, the alleged assault that happened in Smyrna's jurisdiction, I believe. A Smyrna spokesperson confirmed to me that Smyrna played a small role in the investigation, and then they had said that, I believe the victim filed a report with Smyrna, and then Smyrna turned it over to Cobb PD. Is that correct?
The victim had an encounter with the Smyrna Police Department weeks before the Cobb County, I'm sorry, several days before the Cobb County Police Department became aware. Smyrna reached out to us and relayed some information from her. The victim at that point refused to be interviewed by a Cobb County detective about the matter. So, and then she, for all practical purposes, disappeared. This individual does not have a specific local address, so our detectives were unable to follow up. We came back had another encounter with her when she approached 2 of our Precinct 4 officers while they were on a traffic stop. She was not related in any way to that traffic stop, and she approached our officers at that point and then explained a little bit of her situation. Our officers saw the importance of the matter, and they reached out and tried to facilitate a meeting between her and our detectives. Again, she denied at that point, and she asked to leave, and there was no criminal reason to prevent her from leaving, so we allowed her to leave. But we took the information that she did provide in that short encounter with our officers, and we began a very brief initial investigation to see if we could confirm any of it. We were able to confirm some of that information, and at that point, discussions with the command staff and myself and Major Farrell, I made the decision that we would seek out this lady. So officers were specifically sent out to search the area where she had last been seen, and we were fortunate enough to find her within a pretty short period of time, within 24 hours. At that point, I believe she felt like we were serious about her complaint, and she agreed to come in and talk with our detectives, and that began the investigation.
I think you just answered my question, but can you elaborate a little bit about her reluctance initially to help in this investigation and to bring the complaint forward?
I think sometimes people, and I'm speculating here, I can't speak exactly to her thoughts. Sometimes people may or may not be reluctant to talk to police. That can be based on past incidents with law enforcement, that could be based on perceptions, that could be based on many different factors. But for whatever reason, I think she was reluctant. But I think the key thing is that even though she was reluctant, the department showed the initiative to seek her out and to try to help out in the situation. And it would appear to me that she saw that as a positive thing.
And there is evidence then, apart from her statements, that you are relying on now in bringing these charges?
Her statements were very credible, and which has led us to other evidence.
Such as surveillance cameras nearby or other kinds of evidence?
I want to be careful about going into it at this point because the criminal investigation is still active, and I do not want to jeopardize that.
Hey, Chief, are you guys currently looking for DNA evidence inside this man's patrol car?
That would be an area that I do not want to go into because it's an active criminal investigation, and it will be something we could possibly address at a later time.
And can you tell us a little bit about the officer, how long he's been on the force? I understand he was part of the DUI task force.
The officer had been with the Cobb County Police Department for approximately 4 years. He had been recently assigned to the DUI task force, so he'd only been on the DUI task force for a few months.
Is this particular officer an ex-member of the military, or is he a vet? And also, what is your department doing to try to help officers who may be undergoing trauma or the chaos that comes with the job?
I'm going to, excuse me a second, I think I know the answer to your first question, but before I misspeak, I want to make sure.
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. He was a member of the military previously. I do not know if he was still involved in the Guard. What the department is doing to help officers, the department takes the health of an officer, whether it be physical or mental or whatever, very seriously. We have taken upon ourselves to establish groups that we call peer support groups. They are officers that are actually work the road, that are working side by side with other officers, but they're trained to recognize anybody that may be dealing with issues that would cause an undue amount of stress. We also have a very active chaplains program that can reach out and assist any officer with any spiritual concerns if that's something they choose. And then the county also has the employee assistant program. So there's several avenues for an officer to seek help if he should
And
choose.
one follow-up question about the timeliness of this gentleman turning himself in. Have you heard anything from the victim as far as how she felt going from May until the end of June before he was under arrest?
I have not. The case has some unique challenges in the fact that we're not always know where the victim is at any given moment. So sometimes communication has not been as easy as we would have liked in other investigations.
And as far as your partners, I don't see anyone from the Hispanic community here.
I believe we have some Hispanic media here. I know we have one of our.
No, I'm talking about your partners.
Yes, ma'am.
Mhm.
I understand. And please understand, this was a rapidly evolving situation. The warrant was obtained yesterday. The media began making inquiries, I believe, yesterday afternoon. There was a request by the media for further dialogue, which late yesterday afternoon, I stated that we would hold this press conference. the people that are here with me, the community members, the stakeholders that are here with me, they are people that have been very gracious to take the time out of their day to come up here because they see the value of working together with the police department. It's not just a police department issue, it's a community issue. The police department relies on the community relies on the police department. We work in partnership together. Neither side can solve the issues all by themselves, but it was a very short window of time getting people together, and I'm not sure if anybody from the Hispanic community was available to attend at such a short notice.
Just to clarify, she was never actually in police custody, correct? He pulled her over, this happened, and he let her go?
The Cobb County Police Department did not have her under arrest at the time of this situation.
So she wasn't driving a car? She wasn't on foot?
She was not driving a car. Now, let me clarify my previous statement. She was not under arrest. The officer went out on what we would call a suspicious persons type call. So the officer normally would investigate that. So she was being detained, but she was not arrested.
And do you
under
know
arrest.
the exact location? Was it around any kind of shopping centers, major intersections, or?
I believe it was in the area of Benson Pool Road.
Okay.
I think there's a mixture of some residential and commercial district in that area.
Did this officer have any experience in any other departments before coming to Cobb?
I do not know the answer to that question.
Is he being investigated for any, possible instances while off duty or, doing security anywhere?
At this point, I'm not aware of any situation that involves any off-duty conduct.
Since we're all
Can you
here,
say at this point what made the young woman suspicious to that officer? What generated the call? And was that initially justified? Was she acting suspicious?
It was the early morning hours in a dark location. I want to be very mindful of the victim, but the victim has a transient background, and sometimes they forage for staples when the public is not actively around and watching. The officer just happened to run across the individual when that was occurring.
Is it proper to describe her as homeless?
I can't say for sure if she was. I can say that there would be some suggestions that say that she may not have one particular address.
You may have addressed this before, but have you had any other people come forward about complaints regarding this officer?
The officer does have a few complaints that have been filed throughout his career, and those complaints have been investigated by supervision and by internal affairs.
The same nature of this case?
It's not necessarily the same nature of this case, but anything from courtesy to a misunderstanding of why somebody was stopped. Sometimes, what I mean by that, sometimes someone may not fully understand why an officer is meeting with them on the side of the road as a suspicious person. Obviously, you would not feel like you were a suspicious person because you were minding your business, but given the time, the location, or whatever, the officer may. And sometimes there's a misunderstanding on that. But he does have a few complaints. At this point, those complaints have been investigated by either internal affairs or by his immediate supervisor.
And was he exonerated, sir?
It was a mixture of exonerated or complaints found to be unfounded at that time.
Chief, getting back to what you said earlier about how everyone in the department is appalled by this, do you believe that you have the precautions and procedures and policies in place that would prevent this from happening again? Was this one officer, in your opinion, who chose to violate his training and the rules and the law that are already in place to prevent this kind of thing?
I feel like the Cobb County Police Department does an excellent job of training its officers. We do an excellent job of instilling core values and tenets of conduct. We drive those home continuously to our employees. To give a 100 absolute that this would never happen anywhere else would require me be able to predict human behavior of another individual, which I'm not able to do. But I think the police department is doing everything that it can through procedures, policies, training to prevent this from occurring again. Yes, sir.
Were the number of complaints he had typical of what an officer might have during like the normal course of their policing work?
I would believe that during his course of employment with our department, it would probably be about average. Yes, ma'am.
Going back to the basis for our Hispanic community, can you just emphasize what protection a victim has at the moment of reporting this type of incident?
Okay. Anytime, whether it be somebody in the Hispanic community or any other community, if something doesn't seem right, the citizen has the right to request that officer or a supervisor to meet with them. They have a right to file a complaint immediately. And the policy of the Cobb County Police Department is we will investigate all complaints. We take all complaints seriously. We do not ignore any complaints. If it ends up being an unfounded complaint, so be it. But if it's not, then we want to be able to deal with that complaint immediately and thoroughly. Maybe one more question if there is another, and then I have a 2 o'clock meeting, so.
Well,
please
just to
understand.
sum up, just to be clear, it's not a matter of one person's word against the officer. You obviously are confident enough to charge the officer that you have evidence beyond the accuser's accusation.
We're confident that they're in our evidence, and it is not a he said, she said situation. All right. Hey, thank you very much for being here. Again, I want to thank our community members, our stakeholders, and the relationship that we have, command staff that's been here. While I have great pride and confidence in this police department, it's a disappointing time in the actions of one individual, and please understand, that is one individual. That is not the way this police department handles things or works or conducts itself. So I really want to stress that. I've been with this department 34 years. At no time has this type of behavior ever been acceptable, permissible, or even thought to been something that is allowed. So I do want to make it clear the officers of this department do an excellent job every day, sometimes in very hard and complex situations. This is just a unfortunate situation that has occurred, and we recognize the seriousness of it, and we're dealing with it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.